Thank you, Mr. Chair. As already stated by our dear panelists, the responsibility lies on the people sitting on the third floor. They have been the mute spectators, whatever is happening in Kashmir, Western Sahara and other places who demand rights recognition. As we are discussing today, the impunity, and you have given the definition of impunity and Mr. Ambassador, the very essence of impunity. Accountability is essential for combating impunity. Unless there is accountability, the impunity will continue and people will continue to suffer. And so the states responsible for the human rights violations need to be accountable. But unfortunately, UN systems have so far failed to make these states accountable for their crimes against humanity. For last 30 years, almost, and in general we say 70 years, the people of Kashmir are struggling against the Indian occupation. But the Indian denial and Indian repression continued in Kashmir. We tried a lot in the last 30 years in this United Nations systems to create awareness among the states, among the NGOs, so that they could come forward to rescue people of Kashmir from this oppression and solve the problem. As Mr. Ahmed said, that international community came in. They stopped two countries for going a nuclear war or for going to war. But unfortunately, the people of Kashmir, who are the main sufferers of this conflict, they continue to suffer. There is no let loose of terror in Indian occupied Kashmir. Even when the nuclear warheads of both countries were on rise, and even at those days, there were search and siege operations in Kashmir and people were killed. And even at that day, pallets were used in some places and at least 8 houses were demolished in a village in Langate. It was only on that day, when people were listening only to that India and Pakistan are at the brink of war. But people of Kashmir were suffering, and people of Kashmir continue to suffer. For last so many years, we tried to knock each and every door, but we got a report from the Office of the High Commissioner. As I'm talking about it, 14 June 2018. This was the first ever report from the Office of the High Commissioner vis-a-vis the human rights situations in Jammu and Kashmir. And in that report also, if I'll go into the details of the report, the Office of the High Commissioner catalogued all the categories of human rights violations that are being faced by the people of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and has given some recommendations to both countries, India and Pakistan. But in that report also, High Commissioner has laid very much emphasis on the impunity. We have a 2.3 minutes video, if I can play it, what High Commissioner says. Is it? Are you able to?
I'm not able to
Yeah.
play it.
Yeah, it's just yeah, go back. Yeah.
There's the sound.
Leave. It's later already. There's some technical issues with the video, but in that video, High Commissioner talked about the impunity in Indian occupied Kashmir. He talked about the impunity the Indian forces enjoyed by virtue of Armed Forces Special Power Act. He talked about the impunity about enforced disappearances in Kashmir. He talked about the impunity about sexual violence in Kashmir, how the Indian forces are not made accountable for that. But to understand the regime of impunity, the blanket impunity in Indian occupied Kashmir, you have to study two important reports. If you will study those two reports, you will study those two research studies by local human rights groups. One was in 2012, a study by International People's Tribunal on Human Rights. It was alleged perpetrators and stories of impunity in occupied Kashmir. And the other one was the structures of violence in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Both these documents are well researched, documented, and take all evidences by the government records. And they have given the whole steer of how this impunity is there in occupied Kashmir, from command level to down towards the basic soldier, how they enjoy this impunity. And this report, alleged perpetrators, that documented 500 people, the officers of Indian Army, police, and civil bureaucracy who were involved in different types of human rights violations, but none of them was brought to justice. Even the FIRs, government records, everything is against that. Whenever government comes under pressure of some incident, they make an inquiry committee on that, but those inquiries were never held. According to reports, till date, 2021 inquiry commissions were ordered in occupied Kashmir, but none of the inquiry was made public, and no one has been brought to justice so far there. So the other report which I talked about, the structures of violence, that talks about how much army is there, where they are stationed, how they work, and how they enjoy the impunity. And all these human rights violations stem from the impunity, and the Indian forces enjoy this impunity by virtue of that draconian law called Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which was debated in this council during 3 sessions of UPR.
Of basic human rights, and continues to this day.
Yes.
The video is ready.
It's ready now? Let's play it later on. So, you have stole my tempo. So, that was talked time and again in the council.
The political dimensions of the dispute between India and Pakistan have long been center stage, but this is not a conflict frozen in time. It is a conflict that has robbed millions of their basic human rights and continues to this day to inflict untold suffering. So that's why I will be urging the Human Rights Council, the UN Human Rights Council, to consider establishing a commission of inquiry. Given all that we have learned and the current serious tensions, including those stemming from a series of recent incidents in Srinagar, I urge the Indian security forces to exercise maximum restraint and strictly abide by international standards governing the use of force when dealing with future protests, including ones that could well occur this coming weekend. One of the most dangerous weapons being used against protesters in Kashmir is the pellet-firing shotgun. A number of people have been killed and thousands injured by shotgun pellets since July 2016. Many people have been partially or completely blinded, and I am urging the security forces to completely halt their use of this inaccurate and deadly weapon during crowd control operations. One particular Indian law gives security forces virtual immunity against prosecution for any human rights violation. The report found that in the nearly 28 years that the law has been in force in Jammu and Kashmir, there has not been a single prosecution of armed forces personnel granted by the central government. There is almost total impunity for enforced or involuntary disappearances, with little movement towards credibly investigating complaints, including into alleged sites of mass graves. There is also chronic impunity for sexual violence in Kashmir, both for incidents allegedly carried out by security forces and by armed groups.
In 2013,
So this was High Commissioner on impunity, how it stands, and I was already talking about the Armed Forces Special Power Act, how it overrides the right to life, and Special Rapporteur on summary executions, Christoph Hans, the former Special Rapporteur, in his report when he visited India, he also asked the government of India that this law should be abrogated, and because this overrides the right to life. But unfortunately, this law is there, despite the in 3 UPRs, India was asked to repeal this law, but India did not. And along with this law, there are many laws. This law was also invoked in the Northeast from 1958, and still exists in some of the places over there. But in some places, the Supreme Court has said that there is no need of permission from the central government. But when it comes to Kashmir, the Supreme Court also has said that the central government should give permission for prosecuting or making anybody accountable for their crimes. So in that way, if you go by these 2 reports which I stated, and then the role of Indian judiciary, which I said Supreme Court of India, what they said in this case of Armed Forces Special Power Act, there are many fake encounter cases in Kashmir which were inquired by the CBI, other people, and then some of the personnel from the army, they were nominated that these are the real perpetrators, they should be brought to justice. But then again, the government of India, the central government, and then the army, the court martials, they released them. So why? The systematic human rights violations are continued in Kashmir because none of the perpetrators have been brought to justice. So who will bring them to justice? Now we see in India a prime minister, an army chief, after killing 100,000 people in Kashmir, more than 7,000 extrajudicial executions, after making 10,000 people forcibly disappeared, the army chief says, now I have given free hand to the army. When did the army did not have the free hand? Army had always the free hand. Vajpayee's government, when he visited Kashmir, and after that, most recently he was interviewed in a television show, there he said that when I came to back, I saw the situation in Kashmir. The Kashmir has almost gone out of hands of the India, and the government of India needs to initiate a dialogue in Kashmir, initiate some peace process in Kashmir. But when I talked to some of the government officials in the PMO office, I was told we have a policy on Kashmir. That is a strong state policy. Kill as many Kashmiris as you can. These are the policies of government of India. But unfortunately, the people in the room 20, they scratch each other's back and do not do what the human rights systems want them to do. They are not doing justice to the cause for which the council is formulated. For the promotion and protection of human, they are not doing it. They are just scratching each other's back. So we will continue to hammer on their conscience. Someday they will have this much of sense. They will make the perpetrators accountable for their crimes. I leave it at that.